Anyway, I want to talk tonight about, starting off, about distributors. The distributor is one of the three big parts of the powertrain that makes the engine work. You've got an engine, which is, I'm going to back up here. The engine's huge, right? The engine's like this big, and it's got pistons and a camshaft and oil and rockers and all kinds of stuff, and it's like really intense. It's a really big unit. Then you've got the carburetors, which, if you've got dual SU carburetors, are maybe 3 times as big as your fist. You got the suction chamber, you got the body, and you got the float bowl out on the side. So that's really big. And then you've got the third component, which is just as critical as the rest, which is the distributor, which is only as big as your fist. It's only as big as one fist, and yet it's the nervous system. It controls what's going on, and it's often overlooked, often misdiagnosed, often ignored. So I just want to go through it tonight, just a little bit. There's a lot to talk about distributors. I just want to talk a little bit about it. So many years ago, in a different computer program, I took all the different MG distributors that there might be, and between a TC 40048 distributor and the very latest, like 1980, I don't go past that. I made this book, and you can see how thick this book is, and I've got distributor advance curves for all the different distributors. And so that's the advanced curve. There's no such thing as an advanced curve. They're intersecting lines. You might have 2 springs of different rates. So it advances very quickly with a light spring and then advances much more slowly, but the advance is linear. There's no curve to it at all, but it's always referred to as a distributor curve. So when you start the car, you want it really retarded so it doesn't buck. So maybe it's starting at the spark comes right at top dead center, right when you start it, or maybe it even comes after top dead center. But as soon as it starts to run, that spark has got to come around 14 degrees or so before top dead center, just at idle. And then between there and when you're running flat out, which might be 3,000–4,000 RPM, that line changes. And let me just find another one here. See if I can come up with, I should have marked it already, the 40897. That's my favorite MGA or MGB distributor, 40899. I'm close, 40897. So here's the best distributor ever for an MGB engine, okay? So you can see that it starts down here and quickly advances, and it's running around 14 degrees or so. And then over a period of time, when you get up to 3,000 RPM, it's running at full advance. The distributor, in the case of the MGB, the 40897 distributor was the best distributor that they used. They used that in England, that same advance curve, all the way right through about 1978. But the easiest way to make a car meet emission standards is to fiddle with the timing. I remember working on Datsuns back in the day, back in the early 70s, and they had 2 sets of points. And one set of points would work up through a certain range, and then the other set of points would kick in and work in a different range, all having to do with emissions. Today, it's all computer controlled, fuel injected. I mean, it's just my late wife's 1998 Toyota Sienna could out accelerate almost any MG I ever worked on, and it got better mileage, and it was a great big shoebox with wheels on it, you know. But that's how much better engine control has become since the days of mechanical distributors and carburation. But the distributor is fiddled with a lot. So between 1968, the first year of emission controls, and 1980, that's only 12 years. I think there's 10 different distributors, and that's for the US. There's different distributors for Canada and France and Sweden and England. And I don't know, we're in Sri Lanka, who knows? So there's just a whole bunch of different distributors, and it all has to do with meeting emission standards. What you want is the best distributor you can get to make the car run well, okay? That's the bottom line. Two guys in the country right now that are doing, that I know of, who are doing distributors. Jeff Schlemmer in Minneapolis, the trading under the name of Advanced Distributor, and Rob Medinsky in New Hampshire, trading under the name of British Vacuum Unit, because that's what he started making first. And they'll make up whatever distributor you want, but if you talk to them and say, you know, you want that early distributor because that's the one that makes the engine run the best. Of course, that depends on the cam you've got in there, but get it to run the best, then they can work with you and come up with a distributor that's a whole lot better than the emission distributor that you might have now. So the distributor does three things. It makes the spark, it times the spark, that's what we're talking about with the curve, and it distributes the spark. So I brought several examples. So people say, oh yeah, I changed my distributor. And I'll say, well, what kind of distributor did you put in? They say a 25D. 25D distributor works in Minis and Austin Americas and Morris, Austin Marinas and Midgets and MGBs. And it's only 25D only defines the body. So let me find here, I've got, where's my, oh, come on. Well, I don't have my early one, my DM2. So you start off with a T-type, and they've got a very early distributor that wears out real fast, a DKY style distributor. And then they graduate to the DM2 distributor that's used in the MGAs. And then they get to the 25D distributor that was used in the MGBs through 74. And then you get a 45D distributor used through the end of production. So this is the, here we are, here's the DM2. I don't know if you can see, it says DM2 on the top of it, but it looks like a normal distributor until you look at a 25D, and then you see that the body is slightly different. None of the internal components will change over except the points and condenser. That stays the same. The vacuum unit, I suppose, stays the same too. Cap and rotor stays the same, but it's the guts down inside that actually make it work. Those change a lot. Then we come along and we've got the 25D distributor. Thought I had everything all laid out here, but of course I don't. So the 25D distributor is next, but here's a 23D distributor that looks just like a 25D, but it's got no vacuum unit. Plus it's got a neat cutaway cap that I did. So you can see the rotor spinning on the inside. And when you look down inside, you can see the points open. So anyway, this will work. This will work in a T-type. Well, you got to change the gear at the bottom. The DM2 here, that'll work in a T-type or a 1980 MGB. So will this. And the 45D distributor, which is used in 1975 only in the United States. It's got points, but it's a different style body. It's got a different rotor, different cap. Nothing on this distributor is exchangeable for a 25D. But the 41427 distributor here has got the same advance curve as a 40897 in the 25D body. So it isn't the body that you're going after. It's what the advance curve is. Finally, we go to the 45DE, which has got electronic electronic stuff on the inside. It hasn't got points. It's got a magnetic pickup. This is the later style, which is the good style. So let me just explain a little bit more about the inside of the distributor. Of course, I meant to thought I had everything here, but this is just a quick course. So down inside the distributor, we have springs and weights, and as the distributor goes faster, the rotor, you can hear this thing snap back. The rotor advances and changes its position. The rotor and cam changes position versus the pickup, the points or the electronic pickup. So it changes the cam in relation to the points, so the pickup. The vacuum advance, you can see that work. The vacuum advance changes the position of the points versus the cam. You don't need a vacuum advance. This 23D distributor here, without the vacuum advance, racers use these. They don't like the dual plates that are involved with the vacuum advance. And a vacuum advance is there only for drivability and efficiency. You don't need to have a vacuum advance to make the car run well at all. That you get a little better mileage with a vacuum advance, but it's not critical. Down inside the distributor, you've got this plate. So here we've got the points, which I got my finger in the way, but the points open and close when the cam goes through the middle and the cam is turning. It opens and closes the points. Then you've got a condenser on the side. That's the bane of our existence right now. Condensers, Glenn from Glenn's MG service in St. Petersburg says, the automotive industry made condensers for 100 years without any problem at all. And then about 10 years ago, they forgot how. But it probably has to do with where they're being made today, and not whether they know how to make them. Which, oops, sorry, technical call. So anyway, this is the plate, and the top plate moves in relation to the, I don't know if I can show this or not. The top plate moves in relation to the base plate when the vacuum advance works. And you got the low tension lead here. John Tershak, wasn't that your problem on Saturday with the low tension lead was shot on your MGA? I think so. So inside the condenser, I mean, nothing's really complicated here. This is the inside of a condenser. It's made up of saran wrap and tinfoil. So here's the can that distributor came out of. I opened this up years ago. It's probably a good one. Too bad I lost it. And then here's the wrap. Here's the tinfoil and plastic on the inside of this thing. So it's not a complicated unit. It just has to be made correctly so it doesn't fail. You have to have a good condenser, or when the points break, trying to get this plastic off my fingers, static electricity. When you have to get the points to break nice and cleanly. Back before an incandescent light was just, that Edison made was the first incandescent light. There were arc lights prior to that. So if you take two pieces of carbon and put them next to each other and start running a pretty heavy current through them and then draw those apart, the electricity will jump across the ionized air and give you a brilliant arc light. The same thing happens when the points open. When the points are carrying current and the cam comes around, and cam inside the distributor comes around and pushes those points open, and the electricity is in motion. It's compared to water hammer. If you've hooked up your washing machine incorrectly in your basement, when the solenoid closes on the washing machine, your pipes can go bam, because there's all that motion inside the pipe, and it can't just stop. Something has to give. So the pipes move in the opposite direction of the water when you get water hammer. In this case, with the electricity flowing through a circuit, when you start to pull those points open, it'll continue to spark. And if it does, it screws up the timing. That's why when you've got a bad condenser, the car snaps and pops and backfires, because the timing isn't coming, the spark isn't coming to the spark plugs when it should. It's coming at some other random time. Anyway, the distributor times the spark, and I brought along, of course, the center so that I could show that to you. And I don't know what I did with it. It's in the back of the car or something or other, to show you how the weights work there. And that changes the position of the distributor cam in relation to the points. And then you've got to, at times the spark, you make the spark by opening the points with a condenser in place. And then you got to distribute the spark. So there's a bunch of different types of rotors. I brought all these different rotors. I've got a collection of rotors. So this is an old Lucas rotor, and you can see that it's got a nice long section there. This is some aftermarket, not made quite as well, rotor. We've got a shorted rotor. Here, the spark went right from the rotor to ground, and this says MAK. He was out at the party on 1998. This is the spark went right from the rotor to ground. If that happens, of course, there's no spark that's going to get to the spark plug. So here we've got a $2 part, what used to be a $2 part, causing a complete failure of the engine. On the other hand, here's an aftermarket one where the blade actually broke off it. This didn't run. This didn't run either. And then, in market contrast between the 25D distributors and the 45D distributors, we've got a very different type of rotor. This is the 45D. This is the 25D. You can see the lead on this because this is always traveling anti-clockwise. So a rotor that's made for a distributor that turns clockwise is hooked in the opposite direction. These, and look at the difference in these. These are both Lucas ones, I think. One's got a hole in it. See my nose through the hole. And the other one doesn't have a hole. Why has it got a hole in it? To make it lighter? I don't know. And one time I saw a rotor which had springs in it, and it was a rev limiter. So when this thing started whirling fast enough, it broke the contact, and no longer would the car run above whatever this thing was set at. And I think it was even adjustable. Lucas would be a really cool piece to have on display tonight. The other part of the ignition system is the coil. The coil changes 12 volts up to 18,000 volts. Coils do go bad over a period of time. The inside of a coil is pretty simple. You've got here's the windings on the inside of the coil. Here's the two leads that one goes to the distributor and one goes to the power source. It's just a magnet, and here's the pieces of metal, soft iron on the inside of the coil that are magnetized. This thing is, after all, just a transformer. But the secondary coil I mean, you can't, I don't think I can get close enough. This stuff is the thickness of a human hair. I don't think no matter how close I get to here, maybe you can see, I don't know. You cannot even see this, but this wire is so fine that I think that if you put a pencil through this and started walking with this end, you could get to downtown you could get from here to downtown Grand Rapids. There's a lot of wire in here, just a lot of wire. So that there's 1,500 turns here for every one turn there is here, because we're changing 12 up to 18,000. So coils go bad, condensers go bad, points go bad, distributors go bad. There's not a lot you can do with your own distributor. You can take it apart and service it and oil it, make sure it's not frozen, stuff like that. But does it advance at the correct rate? Unless you got a distributor machine and unless you've got a supply of distributor springs, you're not going to be able to do this very easily. And both those firms, Advanced Distributor and British Vacuum Unit, both Schlemmer and Medinsky, have got distributor machines, and they'll get your distributor to advance it at the right rate. So when you go to set the timing in your car, there's two popular ways of doing it. One is to use a 12-volt test light like this, an ice pick, and you put one end of the test light on the distributor and the other end in something hot like the fuse box. And when the points are closed, your test light will be on, and you rotate your distributor clockwise until the point's just open and lock it down. That's called static timing. So you set the position of the engine, you set the position of the front pulley where it should be, and where's that? It depends on the distributor, depends on the car, but on the T-type, it's top dead center. On a 1973 MGB, it's about 4 degrees after top dead center. And then use your test light, and this whole process is described carefully in your workshop manual. Or better, use a dial back timing light that flashes, and you can set the back of the dial back timing light to 32 degrees. Rev the engine up until it advances no further. You rev it up until you've maximized the advance, which is again up around 3,000 or 4,000 RPM, and then set it at 32 degrees. That's all MGs, not twin cams, not V8s. MGCs, Midget 1500s, Y-types, TCs, TDs, TFs, MG, I keep going. Farina magnets, MG 1100s, they're all 32 degrees before top dead center at full mechanical advance, vacuum disconnected. Critical to remove the vacuum. So anyway, that's my quick course on distributors. So this is, back when I had technical seminars, maybe we'll have some again next year, but this is a real nice display, and you can see the grease, you can see the red grease here on the distributor cam. Got to lubricate the cam here. So as it comes around, each time it comes around, it bumps and opens the points for just a brief amount of time. And when the points open, the magnetic field in the coil collapses, creates that 18,000 volt spark, and wherever the rotor happens to be pointed, it sends the spark to that spark plug. A couple of years ago, we were putting more than a couple. Matter of fact, it was Kurt who was putting Protronics into a point style distributor, or maybe replacing electronic ignition, and we bolted the whole thing up. No spark at the plugs. Spark out of the coil. This monster spark, just incredibly huge spark, goes into the distributor, doesn't come out. Change the cap, change the rotor, Nothing. It's like, what is going on here? And both of us were just Buffalo, and I called my good buddy Glenn at Glenn's MG service, and he said, you dummy, it's phasing. It's phasing. So once in a while, not very often, but once in a while, this bottom piece here is in the wrong relation to where the rotor's pointed, or the points are in the wrong relation to where the rotor's pointed. And instead of this tip here being at the pickup point at the cap, it's right between them when the distributor fires, and then the electricity has no place to go. Very bizarre problem. What's the difference between points and electronic? It's just the switch. I've talked about the points here opening. The points here open and break the contact so that the circuit that's energizing the ignition coil stops energizing the coil collapses. So it doesn't matter if you do it with points or you do it with electronics. Doesn't make any difference. But this, you can look at it. I mean, it's got screws in it and stuff. You can fix this with a screwdriver, a stick, a penny, a tire iron. I've used some of those. Electronic, when it's dead, you're dead in the water. You got to get another one. So if you want an electronic ignition, be sure to buy two and carry an extra one in the glove box. If you carry one in the glove box along with a screwdriver, so you can actually change it, you'll never need it. But if you don't carry it, the car will know, and there'll be problems. In the beginning, Protronics was great, just great. The failure rate wasn't even on the chart. Lately, they don't seem to be quite as durable as they used to be. They also do not like straight wires, plug wires. Speaking of plug wires, you can spend $8 for a plug wire set, or you can spend, God knows, $800. You can spend $80 for exotic atomic fire injected, thermal nuclear plug wires. It doesn't make any difference. Plug wires don't make your car run better or faster. A bad plug wire will make your car run poorly, but there's no such thing as a better plug wire. Oh, it might last longer. An $18 one kit might last longer than an $8, or a $38 one might last longer than an 18, but there's no difference between one plug wire and another. You can use lamp cord, except you just got to make sure it doesn't get anywhere close to anything, because the sparkle will jump right through that thin insulation on a lamp cord. So you can't get a better spark plug wire, nor can you get a better plug. You can get plugs that work, and you can get plugs that don't work as well, but you can't get plugs that work better. I remember reading a thing on like MG Experience at one point, and the guy goes, "Oh, I know split fire plugs. That looks like a serpent because it's got two pickup points, electrode in the middle and two guys on the side. I know those work better," he says, "because my car ran horribly and I put split fires in, it runs great." And well, if you just put a normal set of plugs in, it would have run good too, because one of your spark plugs is probably fouled out. I don't like platinum or iridium plugs. Those can get fouled out, and once they get fouled out, it's really hard to clean them off again. It doesn't seem to happen with a modern car where it's fuel injected and everything's all controlled, but just champion plugs. Some people are like, I don't like it. I'm going to buy Atlas plugs. All right, fine, buy an Atlas plug. NGKs or Bosch, or they all have different ratings, different consumer ratings. But Jesus, spark plug's a spark plug. I always go for Champion. And in the MGB and the MGC and the Midget, they're Champion N9Ys. That's what they used to be. N means that it's got a 3/4 inch reach. 9 has to do with the heat, and Y has to do with the turbo tip. MGA takes an N5. Earlier MGs, the earlier T types. The TCs take an L reach plug, which is only a 1/2 inch reach plug. We used to take 3/4 reach plugs out of 1/2 inch reach cars and 1/2 inch reach plugs out of 3/4 inch cylinder heads. They'll work back and forth, but you know, you always want to use the correct one because it's going to run better longer. Plus, there's some danger in getting the spark plug too close to the top of the piston. If you're using a longer plug, it'll either create a hot spot or the piston come up and actually hit it. So anyway, this is just a quick course. It's a really essential part. The distributor and the wiring, the coil, the distributor, the cap, the rotor, the wires, the plugs, they're just as important as the carburetors. And everybody's always carburetor. But in the trade, the joke often is that most carburetor problems are ignition problems. So it's real easy to focus in on the carbs. But if you do a tune-up correctly, you follow emissions, engine, ignition, and finally fuel for carburetors. So anyway, that's my intro. I've talked for 45 minutes. Oh my gosh. And I'm going to open it up now. First of all, to people who have questions about ignition systems. Then we'll go on to the chat section and catch that. So you can just unmute yourself and ask a question about if you've got a particular question with your own ignition system.
What was that champion end plug for the MGA 1622 engine?
MGA is an N5.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Actually, the very first MGBs also used N5s, but that was quickly corrected into the N9Y.
John?
Yes.
Rob Nichols here from Vancouver. I got a 72 MGB and I'm trying to do the ignition, and I've got it being able to do it as a static timing, but when I use the gun, the timing mark on the pulley and the timing mark on the cover is about 90 degrees out.
Okay. All right.
Is that because the little gear inside has been moved around one notch?
No, because the timing mark on your front pulley should be top dead center. So first thing you can do is just double check and take the #1 spark plug out, turn the engine over by hand, use the fan blade and put some pressure on the fan belt and just bring it around so you can see it up around top dead center. You don't want to put if you put a screwdriver in there to get exactly at the right point, be careful because it'll bite the screwdriver and it'll bend something. But then just look at it and just make sure that yes, you've got 5 marks on your front cover, and the last mark that you come to in a clockwise direction, the last mark you come to, the one up at 11 o'clock, should be top dead center. So there's 2 possibilities. One is that the earlier timing covers and pulleys had their marks at had their marks at 9 o'clock. So that's almost 90 degrees. It's closer to 180, but okay. So when you buy a new pulley today from Moss, for instance, it's got two slits in it. One for the 11 o'clock and one for the 6 o'clock. There's another particular problem that happens with older harmonic balancers, and that is that there's an inside which is keyed and fixed to the flywheel. It cannot move, and there's a rubber ring around it, and then there's the outside of it which can move. I've seen the outside of the pulleys move, and so the timing mark is just random. So roll it around to top dead center. So you're looking at the piston right at the very top, and check it and see where your timing mark is. If the timing mark's in the wrong place, make a new one. Crude, it's not exact. And when I say 32 degrees, I don't mean 30 and I don't mean 34. I mean 32 is really critical to get that timing exact. But the piston comes up, the piston comes up and then hangs. Here, let me move back. I hate this
it's got a
camera.
little slump in it.
Yeah, I mean, when the piston's coming around and I mean, when it comes up, that piston hangs there for a while. It hardly moves at all. So it's really hard to tell where top dead center is exactly, but you can get a lot better idea than what it is now. And with a 73, with an original distributor, the cam inside your distributor is an 18-degree cam, which means 36 on the crank, which means that if you want to get 32 maximum, you've got to start at -4. So if you start at top dead center, you'll be real close.
Yeah, no, I've been able to sort of time it as static timing, but I've got an adjustable timing light, and there's no way it doesn't even come near 32 degrees when at a higher higher RPM.
You got the vacuum disconnected.
Yeah, vacuum's disconnected, and it doesn't even come close to it. It
Well,
comes
then
to about 20.
Check and make sure that your indicators are correct.
Yeah, on it. Yeah. Okay, all right. I was thinking maybe the little gear that torques in at the base.
But
I thought maybe somebody had taken it out.
Oh, sure, that's
and
entirely
moved
possible.
It around one tooth.
Sure, absolutely, but that doesn't change where top dead center is or the front pulley.
Oh, okay.
All it does is rotate the distributor on the side of the engine to either where you can't get the dipstick out or where the vacuum advance unit follows the outlet on the oil going to the oil cooler. So
yeah, no, I line it up, where top dead center, where the #1 spark plug should be on the rotor, and do the little move it around till the timing light goes out and set it. It doesn't run all that great. I got another problem with it, but I don't know what the other problem is.
Get that you do it in that order. Emissions, as greater as sliders they are, engine, like consistent compression, stuff like that. Valve lash, and then ignition, and finally carburation.
Yeah, so I've done the ignition. I've done the
we're not sure that we're
adjusted the valves on them. And what happens is it runs, idles fine and all that, but as soon as I start to go, it bogs down, and then if I put my foot right down on the floor, it just goes. And if I do it slowly, the car will pick up slowly.
Well, some people just randomly adjust the distributor until it runs the best, but running the best at idle isn't necessarily the best at high speed. So check that front pulley.
Yeah, okay. And also have I've got two cars. I got the 69 and the 72. 69 I got the SUs, and the 72's got the HIFs.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm forever running those rich. No, I've got a Gunson, and
if you've got a Gunson color tune, it tells you to get the flame looking like it is on your gas stove, which you're fortunate you're in Canada. They want to outlaw gas stoves here. So anyway, they're looking for this blue flame. You can't run an MG with a blue flame. It's got to be real rich. It's got to be real reddish orange.
And it only and it you rev it up and it goes bright red orange when you're revving it up, and then go back down to idle, and it fluctuates back from the blue to the orange on it. So I don't know. I'm looking for vacuum leaks and you name it. I don't know.
Throw that thing away and put it on eBay and sell it to somebody else. I mean, it's kind of cool to look at, but I used one once and thought, well, this is fascinating. But I always do the lifting the piston to judge the mixture. But that is at the very, very final end of everything else. So,
Okay, yeah, well, you answered my question on the
Good.
ignition and the timing light and stuff. So thank you very much.
you're
Hello.
welcome.
Hello,
Hey, John, can you hear me?
This is DJ out in
I'm Bob
Illinois.
Bonastic, and
Let's see, who's on right now? Mr. Banasic.
yes, I have an MG TD,
Yes, sir.
beautiful little car, and it's been running perfectly. And I put in a cord for the what do you call it, RPM, and now I can't get it to start. I had the cord from the
The cable from the tack reduction box up to the back of the rev counter.
yeah, I did that. That's fine, but now it won't start. And I thought the problem might be the wire from the coil to the distributor, so I took some piece off of it and put another connector on, and then connected it back. It will not start. It doesn't even fire.
Well,
It was running perfectly 3 days ago.
no good deed goes unpunished.
Yeah, exactly.
There is a particular fault with that reduction box on the back of the dynamo where it swings over. And if the distributor is correctly positioned, I mean, where it should be, if it was like it came out of the factory, then when that box swings over and it'll touch the LT lead, the low tension lead, and ground it out. That obviously you can't have that. But you should be able to tell with a test light. You take your test, let me find, what I do with my test light, here we go. So you take your test light and you put one end to ground here, and the other end on your on the distributor side of your coil, this end. I got the smart, huh? So I don't end up piercing myself with that's a real sharp end.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, so as you roll the engine over by hand, you know, this test light should come on and off as the points open and close. So you'll be able to tell right away what's going on. And if you're jammed up there and it doesn't make sense, call me tomorrow, or call me Wednesday. I'm going to be in my car all day Wednesday, driving to Altoona, Pennsylvania. Why would you go there? Because it's the 28th annual British Car Fest, and I'm doing a tech seminar and attending their event and so forth. So anyway, I'll be in the car for a long time. You'll be able to call me. I'll answer a question, and you can try it. And
All right.
Call me back.
Maybe
later.
it's just just that mechanism clicking it.
Yeah, that's the most common reason that I mean, that's the only reason that would work out like that. And it might be that. It might be as simple as that. So.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hey, John,
Yes, Mr. Neary.
quick question about the distributor. This is DJ Neary up in Illinois. On the vacuum advance, there's that little knurled screw.
Yes. Yes.
What is the purpose of that?
That is to set the timing while you're on the road. So it's marked A and R,
Right?
right? And
Yep.
when you turn it to the right, it retards it. Retard, right? So you have to remember that. And there's 11 clicks to 1 degree. So this is back in the day when you'd go out and drive the car and you go, you know, I don't think the timing's quite right. So rather than loosen the whole distributor, you might choose to turn that knurled knob 11 clicks to change it by 1 degree, or at least count the number of clicks so you can go back to where you were if it starts to run more poorly. But my suggestion is to get it set at 32 and keep it at 32. So that means that it might idle at 14, it might idle at 20, but that's not where you need the power. The engine's where the engine is all puffed up and making all the energy that it has to is when you're pushing all that air out of the way, when you're running down the road at 65, 70 miles an hour. That's where you want it to run the best. You really don't care where it runs at idle and stuff like that, or mid-range, as long as it's performing. you really want it to work well when you're up at speed. So that's why I always tell everybody, go for the 32. But the
Yeah, I
knurled nut is 11 clicks equals 1 degree.
I always find that when I loosen the bolt to turn the distributor while it's running, I always take a really nasty wrap off of the damn thing.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Well, you laugh, but
I do laugh. I've been shocked a lot. I mean, help me out. You know, I mean, I've been doing this a long time, so you know, you just want to make sure that when you get sparked, when you get jolted, you don't sling your hand back so fast you get it in the radiator fan or something, and you know, and cause some real damage. You know, so.
Hey, John, along with that question, is there a starting position for that knurled knob? I mean, how do we know?
Mid-range.
Okay, how do we know? How do you know it's mid-range from looking down at it?
You don't unless you get it all freed up and greased.
Yeah.
You know, and you saw the red grease on the cam in that 23D distributor that I have up here. When I service a distributor and take it all the way apart,
Yeah.
you know, this guy comes off, and the vacuum advance unit comes out of the unit, and you wire wheel it all up, and you gob it full of red grease, and put it back in and run it all the way up, and then back until it looks like it's about in the middle. That's close enough. If you set it with a dial back timing light at 32, you're never going to touch that anyway.
Now, I'm just wondering if there was a starting, because we were talking about it,
Just
whether there's
mid-range.
like a starting neutral position for it
Mid-range, that's all.
somewhere. Okay, all right.
You, John, you did a YouTube, which was ingenuous. You did top dead center using a spark plug, and you put with.
Ron, your connection is slow, and so I'm missing some of what you're saying there.
You did a YouTube on how to top dead center.
Oh, that was
using a
messy.
spark plug.
I've got a much better way of doing it now, but yes. Yeah, you can use a longer reach plug and turn the engine one way and then turn it back the other way, and then mark the pulley where it stops at each point, and then cut that distance in half, and that's top dead center. So you're bringing the piston up to before it can come all the way up. You can get a spark plug and it'll come down and actually touch the top of the piston. You don't want to force it. You never want to hit the starter motor. Oh my gosh, you're doing it by hand. So you bring it up like this, and then bring it around the other way and back up, and you end up with two marks on your front pulley. Mark those with a paint pencil or something and cut the distance between them. But for the gentleman who was Rob Nichols, I think, was talking before, off by 90 degrees, it's like, you know, just look at it, you know, and see if that might be the middle. But yeah, there's a lot better way than using that all that oil. Oh my gosh, what a mess that was. It'll work. There's a better way now. I should take that one down and put the better one up. You're welcome. All right.
John, this is
John?
Judd, real quick, to the gentleman who's put the tack cable on and stopped
Yes.
his car. Before I was able to rebuild the little drive unit on the back of the generator, I was having that same problem. So he might just try this solution. I don't know if he can see it. Piece of twist tie and pull that thing away and anchor it so that it will stay out of the way, because there's nothing electrical involved in the tachometer. So it's got to be what you said. It's touching it and shorting it out.
Oh, you got a zip tie there or something rather there that is holding that tack. I see what you're doing there.
Yeah.
I've got another method too. It doesn't work on a TC, but works on a TD and TF. And that is to make a little strip of metal and put it into the screw at the top of the dynamo, top of the generator, and bring it back and then position it, drill it, and put that grease zerk through it. And that also fixes it. But the way you've got it done here is good. How come you got the knurled nut on the tack drive though?
That's where it's supposed to be. There's
Pardon?
a knurled nut on the tack drive, and then there's a knurled nut down at the where the cable goes in.
I see the knurl
Oh,
on
I
the
see what
cable.
you're saying. No, I drilled out the rivets to clean out and relubricate the little gears, and I didn't have any rivets to put back in.
Okay.
So I just put in a little 632. I think they were maybe 832, whatever, with real pretty little brass knurled nuts just for the hell of it.
One of the tricks here, because those gears, you got one gear that's real tiny and one big one. I mean, it's a 4.3 to 1 ratio. Those will begin to wear, and if you take the two parts of that and rotate them just a bit, the gears will mesh just a little bit better. We used to do that to fix those tack boxes. So yeah, that's cool. That looks good. Yep, and that keeps that from swinging down there. So
And ultimately, I put a little washer in the large knurled nut that goes on the back of the generator, and was able to tighten it up enough to where it did what it's supposed to. And I don't use the little twist tie anymore.
Yep. Okay. Very cool. Thanks, Judd.
John,
Yes, sir.
this is
Richard.
Richard Pittenger, Troy, Ohio. with,
Yes, sir.
My 1980 MGB that I've been trying to make run halfway decent. I've had it a few months. I've talked to you before. I've been on these calls. I've been going through the ignition more recently, and I noticed in the distributor, I'm concerned about lubrication. You know what I need to do to make sure the distributor, it's as far as I can tell, the original CEI system. And the MGB owner's manual describes 3 different places to lube the distributor in the maintenance. One,
Oh, right down the middle, right down in the middle here. I'm trying to work on this backwards. I can't see what I'm, right down in there, a couple drops of oil. And that keeps the cam from rusting up on the, keeps the cam from rusting up on the center shaft. That helps. The other thing that you want to do from time to time is take the distributor out of the car and bathe the shank in grease so that you can later turn it. Where was I just recently? Where was I? I was someplace. Oh, I was doing the field repairs in Calgary, and I wanted to move this guy's timing, wouldn't move, and I said, go out to, they don't. I don't know if they've got. Well, what's that tool store? The inexpensive tool store.
Harbor Freight.
Harbor Freight. Thank you. I'm not sure they got so much Harbor Freight stuff there, but they've got Canadian Tires, stuff like that. Queen Auto, King Auto, they got something like that. I said, get this giant pair of channel locks, just a giant pair. I'll get that thing loose. So he goes out and spends $50. Of course, it's only 50 Canadian, but still, I grabbed a hold of that distributor. I could not get that thing to move. I didn't want to squeeze it too tight for fear of damaging it because it worked. But oh my gosh, you've got to take your distributor out of your engine from time to time and lube it up just to make sure that it still turns. That is so important, so it doesn't freeze in there. Because fortunately, the designers put the heater control valve right on top of the distributor. So when the heater control valve starts to leak, you know that the heater control valve is leaking because the car runs shitty, because it screws up the spark because the distributor cap gets all wet. But it also can drip down there and freeze, corrode the aluminum shank to the inside of that steel housing. So just always make sure that that distributor is free to turn. But that's all you gotta do, Richard, is just oil right down the middle there, I think.
Well, there's a felt pad in that where you put the oil. I have done that one.
Okay,
The manual also has two other places up there underneath that. They call it the anti-flash shield.
okay,
They call for a few drops of oil through the aperture, they call it, which is like about the 9 o'clock position over.
well, there's this, when you operate the vacuum advance, and this whole thing has to pivot, and to keep that nice and free, you want to get some oil down between those two plates. So maybe that's what they're talking about there.
Okay. But there, and it says also lubricate the pickup plate center bearing. Maybe that's similar to what.
Pickup plates, yeah, that's the one that allows the plates to move. Yes.
Okay.
Well, good for you for reading your workshop manual.
Well, I have a bunch of manuals that came to me with the car, so I'm
Okay.
pretty well set for manuals, but
Good.
John,
And
while
it-
you're
thanks, John.
on lubrication, I was on the side of the road because apparently I had failed to lubricate where the wiper rubs against the cam on the inside of the distributor. I don't know if you can see it on my little picture. That little wiper, it broke off. And
Oh my gosh,
if it comes off, you're not going anywhere.
you're not going anywhere. No.
And fortunately, I was within 5 miles of my shop, so I was able to, one of the other guys went and got a plate. This is one of the few times I drove without the dead gum replacement whole unit in the back of the car, of course. But
Yeah.
how do you lubricate that wiper, I guess you call it, that follows the cam?
Let me get my 23D distributor. This is worth something to racers. Oops, what have I done here? Just a minute. I just there. Okay. Can you see the grease on that cam? See the grease on the cam?
Kind of red?
On that red grease? So I use lots and lots of red grease on the cam, and that then allows the slipper, whatever you want to call it, the finger to run with some lubrication on it.
That's what I do.
I got a lot of red grease on there. Love red grease.
Hey, John,
Yeah.
Gerald Dalton here. Do you have a brand of red grease? I know you talk about that a lot. Is there a certain type? Is it transmission grease or what is it?
NLGI #2 lithium grease, and the most recent tubes that I've purchased have been made by Lucas. There's some humor there. So I just go to Napa. It's just #2. I use red grease just because, I mean, it's just the color. It could be gold, but it's just the color that I use. But red, you can tell that you've greased something, when it's in red. And I don't like blue. Blue's too yucky, but I use red grease.
So it's not an axle bearing. It's not an axle bearing grease or anything like that.
It's just #2. Number
Okay.
two grease, #2.
Okay, fair.
Lithium grease. And in fact, you do use it on the front wheel bearings, you use it on the seat slides, you use it everywhere in the car. Use it to, you take the wiper motor apart and grease up the rack and the motor and the gears. I use it there. I use it everywhere.
When are
Keep-
ballast resistors used?
I have a question
And for what
about the
reason?
timing lights.
All right, here, we got one question first about the ballast resistor. So 1975 through 1979, the coil is run on 6 volts. So it's not a 12-volt coil, it's a 6-volt coil. It's got 1.5 ohms in the primary resistance. When you go to start the car up, well, let's see, let's back up. The government doesn't want unburned hydrocarbons in the atmosphere. So if the car's hard to start, you're pumping air fuel down the tailpipe that's raw fuel, unburned hydrocarbons. So right when you go to start the car, the 18,000 volts that you're supposed to be getting out of the spark plug wire, out of the coil, is reduced because the 13 volts, 14 volts that the car runs at has been suppressed to about 10 volts because the starter motor draws so much current that it suppresses the voltage too. So now the coil is just getting energized by 10 volts, not 12. So we're not getting a spark of 18,000 volts. We're only getting 16 or 14,000 volt spark. If there's any time in the car's operation that you want a bigger spark than another, it's right at startup. So they run the car at 6 volts, except at startup. Then you get full battery voltage. So you turn the key on, the coil's energized with 6 volts, but you turn it over to start, and just while it's spinning over, you get full battery voltage. So all of a sudden you get this monster spark right at startup. So the chance of it spinning over and starting is greater than spinning over and not starting and pumping all those unburned hydrocarbons out the back end. Same thing goes for turning the car off. From 1973 through 1980, there's the anti-runon circuit. So when you turn the car off, it starves the engine for fuel, and the car stops, the engine stops dead. It does not go ba-bump, 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 which my MGA does because it's got higher compression. And so I have to slip it to a stop with a clutch. The government didn't want that on production cars. So 75 through 79, Midgets and MGBs have got a reduced running voltage. The resistor, the external resistor to drop the voltage, is an iron resistor wire that begins just underneath the fuse box. Where it's connected to a white ignition wire from the key, runs all the way to the left front of the car behind the headlamp, where it comes out and is reconnected to a white with green. That white with green is just a normal 16 gauge wire, runs all the way to the coil and powers the coil. There's also a white with green that comes off the starter motor, and just during operation of the starter motor, that's energized with battery voltage and overwhelms the other circuit and puts battery voltage up into the coil. There is a little external resistor with on a white porcelain base, which sits to the rear of the coil. One side of it is white, but the other side of it is white with blue. And that's a reduced voltage for the original electronic ignition, which is no longer in your car. They're in no one's car. They've all failed. So that's yet another resistor for another reason. But the one that runs the coil is embedded in the wiring loom itself. Sort of a pinky shellacky wire. It exits the loom right underneath the fuse box. If you look underneath there's a little stub of white wires that comes out, and you'll see that wire. Or if you're looking behind the grill way up in front, around where the wiring comes out that runs the turn signals and the side markers and the headlamps. You'll see it come out there. And then up front, it's connected to a white with green that then travels back and is connected to the ignition coil.
Thank you.
More questions about ignition?
I have a question on timing lights.
Yes.
On my car, the timing marks are not visible from the top of the car. How do I time it then?
2 people. What year is it?
70,
Well,
1970.
you can set the timing static at around 10 or 12, and it'll be fine. But if you want to set it with a timing light, which is what you should do, it's absolutely a 2-person operation. So you're underneath because you're the one who's measuring, right? So you've highlighted the timing mark on the pulley, and the last mark, you've got 3 marks there. 70, you know, I don't think you got 4 yet, do you? But anyway, the last mark in a clockwise direction, the biggest mark, is top dead center. And so you highlight that with a paint pencil, white or yellow or something. And then you use your dial back timing light, because you can't use a normal timing light. You can only use a dial back, and get your associate to reach over and rev the engine up as you're watching it. So one hand is holding on to the timing light, watching the timing, and your other hand is up in the air, and you're constantly pushing up, like make it go faster. And the guy's up there terrified it's going to blow the engine up because it's just screaming. But you're pushing up until finally it stops advancing. You can tell it stops advancing because it goes a little bit faster and the timing doesn't change. So and then you put your hand up, and which means let it come back down to idle. Then if you have to make a change, you climb up and turn the distributor. And of course you've got to leave the distributor snug, not tight, but maybe snug, because it'll turn. If you leave it loose, it'll turn. And once you turn it just a little bit, remember you're turning the distributor half as much as you want the effect on the crankshaft. So if you have to make a change of 10 degrees on the crank, you only turn the distributor 5 degrees. When you turn the distributor clockwise, it advances the timing. So take you 3 or 4 times, up and down, up and down, up and down. You get your workout for the day. But it's absolutely a 2-person operation.
Question, I was considering setting the engine at top dead center, static, not moving, and going up where I can see the side of the front of the engine and the pulley, and marking it right there, a line across between the 2 points.
You could do that.
The top. Would that work?
Yes. Yes, you won't be able to get exactly 32, but it'll be really close. Because a paint pencil line is that wide, and that's a couple degrees, but you're just going to do what you can do, So yes.
Thank you. That clarifies it for me.
Okay, great.
Hey, John, I got a spark plug question.
Yes.
When you do your timing, and vacuum line is disconnected, do you plug that up?
No, you don't have to.
Other question is, you said you gap your spark plugs at 32?
35. They come gapped at 35, I think, because you rarely have to change them. The workshop manual calls for 25, but my experience is that the bigger the gap, the less you're going to foul the spark plug. And that's an issue with, using the choke and everything. Just talked to a guy today. Because all my rear 2 plugs are always black. And I said, well, the choke's probably stuck. So anyway, if you have a wider gap, it takes a hotter spark to go across there, and that'll tend to burn some of the carbon off. So I always set them at 35.
Thank you.
Yep. Now somebody else had a question there about
Yeah, a spark plug question.
Yes, sir.
It's Charlie from Southern Indiana. We talked a while back about my 53 sputtering and did all that troubleshooting. And it ended up being that the spark plug, one of the plugs had almost closed. And you remember I sent you the pictures of those. And when I re-gapped them, as you recommended 35, it runs like a dream again. So all the condensers and all the other stuff was that we troubleshot didn't do anything. Ended up being, and these plugs were new. So my question would be, how did it, well, you said some plugs can be too long. I'm wondering if that's the case that I had.
That there was either something in the engine that bounced around and hit that and closed it up, or it wasn't gapped at 35 thousandths when you put it in and you didn't pay any attention to it, or you dropped it and didn't look at it again.
That's what I was going to say. It looked like I might have dropped it, but yeah, once I re-gapped them all, it runs like a new car.
Great. Yeah, that's my refrain here always is you do the easiest, cheapest, simplest stuff first. And
oh, absolutely. But I thought I just bought these new plugs, so I didn't even bother to pull the plugs till you'd mentioned, we'll check and see what they look like. And they were very black. And then when I re-gapped them and pulled them, now they're nice and gray again.
Great. Yeah, I'll talk to people and I say, well, maybe you need new plugs. Well, I just bought new plugs last week. Saying, well, if they're all carboned up, which you can do in 10 minutes of running, or super rich running, how are you going to get the carbon off? Wait till your wife goes away and put them in the oven, and take it up to self-clean, or put a propane torch on them and get them like super hot with some air.
I misunderstood you when you said some plugs can be too long. That's not the case.
Some plugs can be too long, but the TF takes end reach plugs, unless it's got a cylinder head on it from earlier. When you take the spark plugs out, you can usually tell because the last 3 or 4 threads are all black and carboned up. So you can also count the threads, just tedious, bright light and a little 90-degree piece of wire. Count the threads and see how many threads you've got there versus how many there are in the spark plug. Yeah, but so is there a chance you got a TC, real early TD head on your TF? Sure, there is. If you know the numbers, if you know the casting numbers, you don't even have to count the threads. But I don't know the casting numbers, so.
I got Delco R45XL. I mean, they're extra long, but I think maybe you're right. Just they would all be topping out, not just the one.
Yeah, well, it should be, the thread should be 3/4 of an inch long.
All right, I'll check that out. Thanks.
You're welcome.
That casting
John, I've
number
got a
on
question
the
for you.
corner of the head, I happen to be fortunate to have a late TD with an early TD head, so I have to use the wrong kind of plug.
Those L reach plugs, yeah, all right. Let's see, who was on? Jim Webb, you had a question.
Yeah, I called you a couple months ago, my 76 MGB. I was having trouble starting it. You recommended I put a different coil in it to check the ohms on the coil, which I did. And the distributor, I had a cheap distributor and I took it out and put a Protronics in it that I had out of another MGB that worked well, but I'm still having the same problem. It just won't start. It just turns over and over and over, but then eventually it just fires right up like nothing's wrong with it. And when it's warm, it always starts. It's only when it's cold.
Well, could be a mixture problem. What kind of carburetor do you have on the car?
It's got a Weber on it.
Well, has it got a hand choke or an automatic choke?
It had an automatic when I bought the car and I could not get it to work, so I put a manual on it.
And when you pull the thing, the flap closes, I mean, that's it.
Yep. And,
right.
and I do notice that it has to be completely closed before it'll start. If it's just open a crack, it won't start. But if it's completely closed, it starts faster. But still, it doesn't just start right up like it should.
So after you get it running,
sometimes it just doesn't want to start.
After you get it running, take a can of spray carburetor cleaner, and with a long tube on the end of it, so you can direct the spray. and spray between the head and the manifold and between the manifold and the carburetor. And if you've got any kind of vacuum leak, which vacuum leaks just raise havoc, and it's a real easy test. You should have some carburetor cleaner around anyway.
Yeah.
If it changes the RPM a lot, speeds up or slows down a lot, you'll know you got a vacuum leak. And you got to take care of that. And maybe that's what's going on, is it sucking air, fresh air in, and you haven't got a rich enough mixture. You know, because as you said, that flap has to be all the way closed, and that's not really normal.
No, I have a 72 MGB with the same carburetor, and it just starts as soon as you hit the key, it fires right up.
Okay. The other thing is to make sure that, in fact, yes, you're getting a spark. So you can take the wire out of the center of the cap and hold the spark plug wire up against the coil or the dipstick or something that's metallic, and just have someone spin the engine over.
Yeah, I've done that. I am getting spark.
Okay, all right.
And once it starts, it runs great. It runs fine. And then you shut it off and start it when it's warm, it starts fine. It runs great once it finally starts.
Well, it might have something to do with that Weber, but in that, because it doesn't seem as though it should have to be quite that rich. And I don't know a lot about the Webers and all the circuits and everything, but I do know that Webers respond well to a good cleaning. So you have to be, you can't be, you can't have anything else going on. You got to have a nice, great big piece of white paper or a white sheet or a cloth, and take one thing off and put it in relative location to where it goes. And there's a lot of stuff in there. And there's also some balls way down deep inside, underneath some kind of emulsion tubes or something. You got to be careful of those, that if they pop out, they don't run down inside the
Yeah.
But anyway, just take everything out, and you take carb cleaner and compressed air and just clean and blow. And I've always been successful in but it sounds more like a carburation problem. To me, but
It's kind of what I wondered too, after already done with ignition. I've pretty much done everything I can with ignition, I think so. I'll give it a good clean, see what that does.
okay. Nice to have
Thank
a
you.
blow apart diagram of that Weber, so you know what you're doing. Because there are some balls in there.
Well, you told me up in, I think it was down in Louisville, that the Weber makes good grills, but not good carburetors.
Well, that's my joke, but there's a lot of cars that run with Webers. A lot of people can fix those. So, yeah. Do we have
Thanks a lot.
any more questions about ignition?
Yeah, John, I got a question about ignition. Assuming that you've done the proper mechanical timing to 32 degrees and all that, how can you tell if your distributor is advancing at the proper rate and to its specifications?
Well, you could, if you follow me through on this, you got to get the distributor curve. So you tell me what distributor you got. I'll send you a picture of the curve. Then, and of course, it's not the curve, it's the linear stuff. Then you run the engine up until it quits advancing, just with the idle screws and a tack, and you back it off every 500 RPM, check the timing there, bring it down 500, check it there, bring it down 500, check it there, or maybe every 250, and you plot it. And then you can tell if it's got the advance that year demands. That year demands a certain curve so that it pollutes correctly. If you want it to run best, you get that 40897. What year do you have?
Well, I've got a 1980 with a Protronics distributor in it, but the guy that changed it to electronic, he changed it to, I think, like a 1973 or 74 distributor to put this Protronics in. It doesn't have the, obviously the original electronic ignition
Okay,
system that it had.
okay, so you got a distributor from a 1973 MGB that he pulled the points out of
Right,
and put a Protronics in it.
yes,
Okay, all right, so in that one, that's the kind I'm talking about. Make sure you got another Protronics in the glove box with a screwdriver so you can change it on the side of the road when it fails.
I do have that.
Okay, all right. So that one, you want to make sure that the vacuum is hooked to your intake manifold.
Yep.
And there's a huge difference when you hook it to the intake manifold. I mean, let's say that your idle RPM, you're idling at 1,000 RPM, and you look at the timing and it's 14, and you plug that vacuum in, and the idle RPM jumps up to 1,400, and the timing has jumped all the way up to 20 or 22. Because they love to idle fast. The timing likes to be advanced when they idle. They love it to do it up there. The problem is that if it's not hooked to the vacuum, if it's not hooked to manifold vacuum, then when you try to accelerate, it's just way too far advanced. It'll spark knock horribly. You've got to relieve that advance. So anyway, just make sure it's hooked up to the manifold and not that tit on the carburetor. And 32 degrees. And if it's a 1973, your static timing, if you wanted to check it, ought to be around 4 degrees after.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
John,
Yes, sir.
one quick question back on that 1980 MGB. That resistor wire that you described, can you
It's not
confirm
in the
that it's
night-
not
not-
on the 80?
It's not on an 80. No.
Okay, because I can't find it.
That's why.
One of my fixes was changing out the coil. I found out it had a 3 ohm Lucas Sport coil in it with no resistor. And one of the guys on the MG Experience suggested, that was wrong. And so I've since replaced it with what I believe is the correct Lucas coil for that car. It's like a DBL 105 with about a 1 ohm resistance.
He was wrong. You're running your car on 12 volts. You want a 3 ohm coil.
Oh,
You do. Otherwise, well, the spark you're going to get out of that 6 volt coil is going to be twice as great as the spark is supposed to be. No problem with that. Only it's drawing twice as much current. So it's going to tax whatever you've got switching it. If you got points, it's going to burn the points up. If it's electronic, it's going to wreak havoc with that eventually. So take that. He was wrong. Take that off and put that 3 ohm coil back on.
oh, okay. Well, it seemed to be running much better.
Well, it might be that the original coil was faulty.
That could,
That-
well, I can't.
That's a possibility too, so.
They suggested along the way too, that when I did that, I open up that CEI module and refresh that heat sink lube underneath the module.
And I don't know anything
Which I
about
did.
that. Okay, all right.
With like computer heat sink lube.
Okay.
Um,
But you don't want to run a 1 ohm coil on a 12 volt circuit. You get way too much energy going through that coil.
okay, all right, thank you.
Yes, sir. I'm gonna go over to it's already 20 minutes to 9. We got 20 minutes to knock out some of the chat stuff here. And let me see if I can get my chat to work here. Just a minute here. I got a lot of questions here. We're going to go through these pretty fast. Hi, John, could you let us know when it is time to contribute to your cause? Right now, right now. I can never remember when I donated, maybe a 1-year reminder. Oh, Chip, yes, I've seen your name come through. Yeah, okay, well, that's not a bad idea. We can take a look at that and see if there's some way to do it. But on the other hand, I'm professionally begging here. And so what am I supposed to send a note out and say, you haven't given me any money for a while? But anyway, something. We'll think of something, Chip. At least with you, I'll send you a note every week. Anyway, thanks very much. Garth Holman, could someone put the names of the 2 men or company names he mentioned? And Crystal Johnson put down Advanced Distributors, and Ben Andrews put down British Vacuum Unit. So those have both been answered. And John Lind has a 76 MG Midget, but doesn't say anything more about it. Congratulations. But it's all the stuff that we've been talking about is still the same as far as advancing and all that kind of stuff. Scott Coles writes in and says, John, I've just watched your new videos regarding the tube type diff. I have decided to tackle the infamous clunk problem. I climbed under the car today and measured the amount of rotation of the pinion shaft with the trans in neutral and the handbrake engaged. Is about 1/2 inch measured on the diameter of the drive shaft flange. I assume this is too much, but I'd like to know what to expect after the new shims are installed. I've never measured it. I don't know what to tell you. 1/2 inch isn't much. I don't know. And next time I'm underneath a couple, I will measure it and I'll make that information available, but I don't have that information. Linda, to everybody, at times I hear that MG owners should carry a spare set of points. Will you show will you show us what that is and explain why an extra set? Is it difficult to change? When you're on the road, yes. The best thing you can carry is a whole nother distributor. Whole distributor with a rotor and the cap and the wires. So if you think it's the distributor which is faulty, you just pull the whole distributor out and put the whole distributor in. It's like, oh my God, how do I time it? Well, I worked with my daughter, my 33-year-old daughter in California, and got her to pull her distributor out of her 73 MGB GT with a 1/4 inch with a sloppy 7/16 wrench. And I said, just make sure you look and just establish in your mind where the advance is pointed on the distributor. And when you take one out and put the other one in, get the advance pointed exactly to someplace, the vacuum advance unit. So better to carry a whole distributor and change the whole distributor, because that takes care of everything. The cap, the wires, the rotor, the points, the condenser, it's just everything. And because changing points on the side of the road, you can't do it in place. You got to take the distributor out anyway to do it. I mean, it's just a terror to do. I wouldn't choose to do it on the road. I would take the distributor out. As long as you're going to take the distributor out, you might as well have another one in a bag, all set to push right back in with a lot of grease on the shank. So that's my comment about that. Ben Andrews, I found out Saturday what a car runs like with a bad condenser. Okay, I made it to Douglas Walker Park, but my car did not. So, okay, Ben, I didn't realize that your car wasn't out there, but when a condenser fails, the timing is all over the board, and it snaps and pops and kicks through the carburetor, and actually you get backfires, which is like a rifle shot down the tailpipe. It's just Intense, intense. So that's what happened to you?
Yep, and it's at Forest right now.
Okay. Well, be careful. Forrest likes to rebuild engines, so he'll convince you to take the engine out. But anyway, okay. All right. Well, hey, it was a real pleasure to see you there this weekend. I'm sorry you had a problem. So John Lind is back with a 76 Midget. Or John Lind, are you still on tonight? Maybe he is. 3 questions. How can I test whether the tachometer operates before trying to track down problems with the wiring? That's tough.
Okay.
That's tough. That's the
While
wire.
you were talking earlier, I went to the wiring diagram you sent to me and I tried to go backwards from the coil.
There's a single wire, a single white with black.
Right.
It goes from the coil uninterrupted to the tack, and that's only that far, right? Because I hate this camera. It's only that far because the coil is right sitting on top of the brake master cylinder there, so it's a real short wire. But the tachometer has a green power wire, a black wire. It has to be grounded, and it's got that wire that comes up. And if it's running, take your knuckle and hit the front of that tack, and sometimes it'll pop up and start working.
Here's what I found out though. There's been so much wiring done on the inside of this engine bay that I've got the white and black wire coming out of the loom, and it's attached to the positive side of the coil.
Yeah, okay, all right.
So
anyway, it's the distributor side of the coil that's got to go to the tack.
To the negative side?
To the distributor side, yep.
Okay. And I've got a green wire, let me see. The distributor green wire to the coils at the negative side, and I got electronic ignition. And the car seems to run fine. The tack just doesn't work.
Okay.
And I was thinking about trying to run my own wire.
You can do that. So just pull that wire off the back of the tack. Easy for me to say, almost impossible to reach. The operational wire, the white with black, and replace it with a new wire going down to the distributor side of the coil.
Right straight to the firewall and stick it in there.
Sure.
Can I move it from the positive to the negative side without damaging the tack?
The white with black right now goes to the power side of the coil.
It's on the positive side of the coil.
Yeah, pull it off there and put it on the other side. That's where it's supposed to be.
It's one of the jerry-rig things I found is that somebody put a male spade, double spade on the positive side and plugged the black and white into one side and 2 red and white wires, I think, or light green wires on the other side.
White with green are your power wires.
I'm sorry, the light green?
White with green
are
your power wires to the coil. One comes from that resistor that I took so long to explain, because you got a 76 through 79, and the other one comes from the starter solenoid. If you look at the solenoid right next to the coil, there next to the heater, you'll see that there's a white with green that comes right off that solenoid.
Okay.
It goes right to the coil. So.
Cool.
Okay.
Yep, that's great.
And then the other one was, what are some of the
oil pressure?
So when you start it, your oil pressure is how high? 75
to 80.
And when it's been running, how high is it when you're running down the road?
It's in that vicinity.
That's okay.
And then when it gets really high, like I'm in 4th gear and I'm going somewhere around 40 or 50 miles an hour sustained, it gets really hot and it goes down to 40.
That's bad. So the only thing you can do without taking the whole engine apart and rebuilding the whole engine, drop the sump, change the main bearings and the rod bearings and the oil pump. Just do it. Of course, you got to take the engine apart before you order the bearings. You got to take the You got to take one main bearing cap off and look at the size of the bearing. It'll be stamped on the back of the shell. Either it won't be stamped, or it'll say 010 or 020 or 030 or 040, having to do with the undersides. So it may be it might be if the engine's been apart before, that the mains are 10 under and the rods are 20 under. You just don't know until you get down there and look. And then order the pieces that you need. And the only tricky part is changing the upper shell on the crankshaft, because that bearing shell is trapped between the crankshaft and the engine block. So you have to have a relatively narrow scraper, certainly wider than this, certainly wider than this, but maybe only twice as wide as this, and real flexible, like a paint scraper would be, or for doing a drywall or something like that, very thin, and you push it up against the bearing, and as you push it, it'll roll the bearing out, and then you push the other bearing in.
Do I want that blade to be as wide as the bearing?
Oh, close.
Okay, and
Close.
I could take a paint scraper and modify it to make it cool.
Sure. Better to use a plastic one than a metal one, because a metal one can screw stuff up.
Okay.
Yeah, and then when you put it all back together, you're using assembly lube, and you're getting the shit dripping in your face, and it's a mess. But that's the only thing that you can do, other than take the whole engine out of the car and get the crank rebuilt and reground, and oh my gosh. So it's you should be running down the road at the same pressure as it blows off at when it's running earlier, but when it's cooler. So
is it possible I've got a head gasket problem too?
Sure, but that's got nothing to do with it. It's got nothing to do with this.
Okay, all right. And finally, since I'm going to do frivolous things with the car in addition to doing bearing work, how do I polish it up to make it look pretty? The aluminum, is there something that I can do for example, on the windshield frame that won't damage it any more than it already is?
I have an article about how to polish a windshield frame.
Okay.
Which I'll send you a copy of if you'll send me an email.
Sure.
I'll have to scan it, but you got to be real cautious, because there's two different metals involved on the windshield frame. There's the uprights and there's the cross pieces, and they've been anodized. They're not polished, they're anodized. You take it all apart. You take the whole windscreen apart, get the four pieces, hire it done. You can make it look like chrome. Starting in 1973, they didn't want chrome on the car because it would reflect and bugger up the vision of the guy who's sitting across the intersection from you, right? So they got rid of all the chrome wipers, and they went black and all that kind of stuff. So they subdued the finish on the windscreen. But I'd be real cautious on that. That's the hard of all the stuff to do. That's the hardest. But send me an email and I'll send you the instructions.
Well, thank you. I've got a later question in the chat you can ignore because we talked about the tachometer.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Thanks.
John, can I jump in with something for a second? It doesn't sound exactly like John's question, but some of it sounded similar.
Okay.
When I took my car out of storage this year, I went for a first drive, and my wife and dog were with me, and I happened to look down at the oil pressure, and it was running a little low. And I thought, okay, fair enough. So I started going a little faster, and it started dropping down even lower. And at one point, looked like it was almost at zero. And I thought, what is going on here?
Ooh,
and
what year? What model?
78 MGB.
Okay.
So I thought, what the is going on here? And happened to wonder, or maybe looked and saw somebody described a similar experience. I had just changed my oil before putting the car in storage.
Oh, you got the wrong oil filter.
I got what I was sold, and I'm sure I may have used those before. I switched it out. It was just, from CarQuest. I
Yeah.
went, grabbed a Fram from Walmart for like $7 Canadian. So it's like, 39 cents American or something like that. Swapped it out and immediately it went right into the center. Not a problem since.
You
And
are
I'm hoping
so,
yeah.
that's that oil pressure, even the most modern, well, I don't know about the most modern cars, I guess they're all electric or something, but even the more recent modern cars, I've got an oil pressure gauge, it's just like, yeah, that's real critical. So that for us here, you got Napa stores out there, don't you?
We do.
Yeah, I use a Napa Gold filter. I don't know who makes it, might be Fram, I don't know. It's a Napa Gold 1068, 2 years after the invasion. Just remember 1066 plus 2. So yeah, the Napa Gold 1068. I got a beautiful picture of that tube bottoming out on the inside of an oil filter that Guy St. John sent to me from Ann Arbor, Michigan. And it's just, the filter's just too short. It's just, there's just somebody, they're looking at the threads and the thread matches up at 5/8 18 or something. It's like, well, the thread's all right, and it's like, no, dude, anyway. Well, good for you.
Well, this was what their computer told them to sell.
Right.
Me. So I haven't gone back in and chatted with them about it, but it was, basically on the car from my house to storage, which is about 10 minutes away, 8-9 months ago. And then I took it for maybe 20 minutes or so for a drive and thought, oh, I hope I haven't screwed something up. But
well, you've accelerated the wear, most certainly. But again, if you as long as you got good oil pressure now, 70, 80 pounds, you're home free. And when that time does come, all you need to do is drop your sump. Easy for me to say, and change the rod bearings and the main bearings. You can only change 3 of them, and that'll pop it right back up again. So,
sounds good.
The question on this, because I'm going to do the simple solution first. How long is a adequate sized oil filter? Because mine, I think, is short.
It doesn't make any difference on the Midget because it fits on the side and it hasn't got a return valve. The bigger the filter, the better, because it just means there's more oil in the whole system. But on a Midget, it does the overall height is of no consequence.
All right. Thank you.
I always thought it was what you did with it. Never mind.
Funny.
John, considering oil pressure gauges, my 72 MGB is always running at 75. No matter what, I start it, drive it, shut it off, whatever, it's always at 75. Does that sound like maybe the gauge is wrong?
No, sounds good.
But shouldn't it fluctuate when you idle and go, it never fluctuates. It's always right on 75.
That means that the oil being produced is going through the limiter, the oil pressure relief valve, and being vented off. And so there's no problem with that. I mean, I would expect on a hot August day at idle at, some sort of 800, 700 idle to have it fall back down to 50. But 72 has got a real oil pressure valve or a real oil pressure gauge in it. It doesn't have an electric gauge in it. 68 through 71 had an electric gauge, and those all read wrong. All of them. That's my rule. They usually read low, but yeah. So.
Okay, great. That's good to know.
Okay. Tershak, I answered that about the vacuum line. Jeff Langanice, 66B, the other day I drove about 15 miles south of town with no issues. I was able to go 72 miles an hour, actually passed a car or two. We ate dinner, and while driving back home, I felt a slight hesitation. At first, I tried to convince myself it was just one of those things, but gradually it got worse and gradually was losing power. Of course, there's an 18-wheeler behind me. Oh my gosh, this is a long story. Slowing down, he got closer and closer. Luckily, there was a turnoff into a gravel back road. I was able to go down there. The hesitation stopped. The hesitation stopped. My gut says it may have been the fuel pump not pumping enough fuel. Yeah, that sounds like that's right. When you're driving at full speed, that's where you need the most amount of fuel. And if you've got a problem with fuel supply, it's gonna compromise your ability to run at high speed, but you slow down to a certain speed, and then the fuel pump, even though it's not putting out as much as it should for 60 miles an hour, will put out plenty to run you 30 or 40 miles an hour. So I check the filters, I check your fuel filters, and Jeff, I would, on a 66B, there is no filter in there. Originally, there might be one in there now. But if you take the line off the carburetor and put it into a can or a bottle and turn on the fuel pump, you know, it's splash, 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 and you should be able to get out a pint a minute. If it's dribbling out, something's wrong. And that's what you experienced. Another thing that can be happening is old gasoline can get down in the bottom of the float bowls, and the float bowls are built like expensive wine bottles. So I'll have to explain them because nobody here buys that kind of expensive wine, but you know, right. But the bottom of a good wine bottle is a hemisphere, right? And all the silt gets caught down on the side. There's no silt, but that's the idea, is the silt gets caught in there. And the same thing with your float bowl. There's a couple relieved sections at the very bottom where the silt's supposed to collect. And it could be, depending on the last time the carburetor float bowls were opened, that the silt in there is so much that it's getting into the jet. So you know, let's take the float bowl lids off, take a rag, spray carburetor cleaner, spray it all out. So anyway, those are a couple possibilities. Nothing like an 18-wheeler behind you and when you're not being able to go fast enough. So anyway, Gary Greenspoon's talking about the microfarads, 0.22 microfarads in the condenser. There's some talk. He says that 18 microfarads is better than 22. I can't believe that the points will last longer with one than the other, because if that was the case, why wouldn't they have made a better condenser in the first place? I don't know. I just don't know that at all. I do know you can put the condenser on the coil instead of it down inside the distributor. So, but now we've got, let's see, spark plugs are like politics, oil, dogs, and religion. Everybody thinks they know what's best. So NGK must be the best because I ran the same set in my TD all through high school. Oh, hey, Pat from California. Are you on, Pat? Pat from California?
You're on mute, Pat.
I'm here, John. Yes.
So where are you? Are you near the storm and the earthquake? The earthquake was in Ojai, wasn't it?
Oh, I don't know about the earthquake. I missed that fun. I just had a little bit of the hurricane. It wasn't bad.
You up by Sacramento someplace or where?
No. I'm in outside of San Diego.
Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah, I talk to people all the time and they, oh, champion plugs are junk. It's like, no, they're not. You might have gotten a bad one once. I mean, you can get a bad hamburger at McDonald's. Anyway, so you like NGKs, fair enough, you know.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see, Pat Guest, I'm driving home and couldn't write down the spark plug info. Can someone put that on chat? So maybe someone did, but for an MGB, it's a Champion N9YC, which now is reduced to a 3-digit number 415. That's the champion number. So, John, after Calgary, I sent you an email asking how easy it is to remove the Protronics and go back to points. A mechanic and put the Protronics in. Well, just offhand, it ought to be pretty easy. I'm just a firm believer in points, although we've had this problem with the condensers. So it's like, do you want a points and condenser with a condenser failing, or do you want a Protronics that leaves you dead in the water? So I haven't heard quite so much about bad condensers lately. Maybe, every now and then there's just a bad bunch of stuff that goes through, and you can always go to Napa. They have a trade named Blue Streak. You can still get points and condenser for 1974 MGB, and just offhand, their quality didn't change much. I think their condensers are made in Mexico. They weren't made in China. So I don't know. Let's see, Paul, everybody. You've got a 77B currently running on aftermarket Eurospec distributor with a Protronics and a sport coil. Don't know which one. I have a distributor from a 67 BGT. We're starting off with a 77B here that will be sent for restoration along with the HIF to be drilled. So you're sending it to Medinsky. Which coil is best for this? Any coil, any 12-volt coil is just fine. You don't have to have the atomic fire injector spark plugs. You don't have to have bumblebee wires, and you don't have to have the Lucas sports coil. Although the Lucas sports coil looks cool, it's like twice as big, and it's got the end looks like those insulators on high voltage wires. And I've got a not a Mallory, who made the superchargers? Judson. I got a Judson electronic magneto, and it's this coil with fins on it. Oh my gosh, it looks like you could go to the moon on it. Maybe that's what the Russians tried. I don't know. Let's see. Way too much grease on that cam. Oh, that's Pat. Yeah, I knew. When I read that, I knew that you were going to say that. But it doesn't ever seem to fly off. And better to have maybe a little more grease than a little less. I don't know. Bosch used to make a grease specific for the cam, distributor cam. I'm sure they did. I'm sure that they did. And if it's been in your toolbox for 30 years, that it started off, a couple billion years ago. So it probably hasn't, Dave, it probably hasn't failed much since then. I use that NLGI #2 lithium grease for everything. I just use it for everything. Pat's not agreeing with me here, but because I still have you on the screen. But all right, let's see. John Lynn, 76B. Oh, the tachometer. Yep, we got that. Talked about that. Al's phone. My fuel pump won't operate unless I run a wire straight to the pump. 78B. New Points pump. Okay, so 77 through 80 MGB has an impact switch, an electrical switch, which lies above the above the driver's right knee, behind the speedo, behind the dash.
Yeah, I jumped past that and it didn't make any difference.
Then go to the junction between the main loom and the rear loom at the rear of the right front inner fender. Where that wire from that.
Right, that too.
Okay, what, you use a test light at each point?
No, I took that connection apart and redid it to make sure that it was good.
Well,
I get voltage. I get voltage all the way back when I have the ignition. When I have everything set correctly, turn the ignition on, I'm only getting 9 volts back at that at the fuel pump. But if I take a jumper wire and bypass it, with 12 volts,
you get full. Well, the 9 volts is really suppressed, so you got high resistance someplace.
Yeah,
but that wire goes from the key switch to the impact switch.
Yeah.
And then from the impact switch to the junction to the rear loom. So yeah, well, whatever you got to do to make it work, but maybe there's high resistance inside that impact switch. I don't know. I've never heard of that, but anything, you can always jump right through that too.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I was hoping somebody had experienced this before, and it's like, hey, this is what it is. But yeah. Okay. That guy that called earlier about a Weber carburetor that wasn't starting. I mean, one of the things with those is the float level's key to that carburetor.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I got a lot of experience with one of those Webers. They're very rebuildable, but they've got some issues. So
You've got to get the stuff correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. We did a tune-up on one, and the guy got from here up to Traverse City and something was going on, pulled his plugs out, they're all black, and he found some guy that, I don't know, did lawnmowers or Volkswagens or something or other, and he looked at it, and moved the float like that much. It ran perfect ever after, you know.
yeah,
So,
they're all right. Thank you.
Also on Webers, they do not like a lot of high idle. They like very low idle speeds when they develop. Otherwise, you can't get the mixture screw to be effective at all.
Okay. So by a low idle, you mean 800, not 1200.
Exactly, and sometimes around 650. So on a well-tuned, yeah, you need to close down that throttle plate as much as you can and just barely crack it open, and then try to adjust your idle mixture screw.
That trim screw, okay.
But if you get it open too, if you get the throttle plate
pretty high.
Yeah, if you get the throttle plate open too far, it actually bypasses the idle mixture screw passages in that, and you're from that point all you're doing is just running a high idle.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. And Pat G has come up with the casting number for the head for the short reach plug, 22952. So that there's a casting number on that head. So if there's any question about having a L reach, half-inch reach plug, 22952, I should commit that to memory. I don't know how I'm going to, but. Okay, Judd, yep, here we go. And 22952, yep, we got the same thing here. Okay. And Tershak is back on here. Spark plugs, some can have a hairline crack. Oh my gosh, yes. If you got a hairline crack in the insulator, there's no substitute but putting another one in there. So, yep, very cool. What is the static timing for a 1975 MG for a Midget 1500? It depends on the distributor. Depends on the distributor. If it's got a 10-degree distributor, how would you know? You look down inside it maybe and see what the advance is. If it's got a 10-degree distributor, that's 20 on the crank, you're looking for 32 maximum, so you want to set it at 12. If you've got a cam on the inside of the distributor that advances at 18 degrees, some of them are 19. Let's say it's 19. That's 38 on the crank. So from 32, that means you got to put it at 6 degrees after top dead center. So it's all has to do with the distributor that you're using. And you can't use a test light. Oh, some people have written articles on how to use a test light with an electronic ignition, but it's really difficult to do. Please comment on the choices of ignition wires, such as metal core, resistor, etc. So if you've got Protronics, you can't use straight wire; it'll burn up the Protronics. Beyond that, you're just looking for consistency in your resistor wires. So if one resistor wire is 8,000 ohms, then the rest of them ought to be 6,000 to 10,000 ohms. I mean, just around there. Obviously, the longer the wire, the more resistance it's got. you can't have better resistor, you can't have better spark plug wires. You can have bad ones, but you can't have better ones. You can only get to good. And beyond that, it's just a waste of money. So I know there's all kinds of stuff, shielded, and oh my gosh. We had a guy come in and spent $200 or something on a set of spark plug wires. It's like, dude, you know, you should have bought new speakers for your radio. It's hard to believe. So, Dave, polarity reversed wires on the ignition coil can reduce the amount of spark to the spark plugs. Well, at least it travels in the wrong way. So the hot side of the coil is always the SW or the plus, and the distributor side of the coil is always minus, no matter whether the car is hooked up positive or negative earth. I didn't believe that. I got into an argument with Glenn at Glenn's MG service in St. Petersburg, and he's got a scope, and he said, unless the coil's hooked up the right way, the spark doesn't do this, the spark does that. So there's anyway, yes, Dave, you are correct. Pittenger, I got two more questions from you about the TAC and the electric cooling fans. So if you're still on, you can.
Yeah, John. When this car starts, the TAC doesn't jump up for probably 10 seconds or so.
That's your knuckle.
Is that normal or?
Yeah, it's very normal. Is it correct? No. But you can take it out and have it rebuilt for $150, or you can just tap the face. I always just tap the face.
Yeah, okay.
You know, just jiggles it a little bit. What's up with your electric cooling fans?
Well, they seem to work okay, you know, cycle on when the car's good and warm and everything. I'm wondering though, they don't spin very freely when I just reach underneath that screen and spin them. How free should they?
Very, very, very. The original ones, they bind up. The armatures bind up on the bearings. So you can, maybe you got to get that screen out of the way, but you can take an oil can and just flush the armature with oil and spin it a little bit and put some more oil on it and spin it and hope that some of that oil migrates back into the bearing, you know. But after a period of time, if that's not working, then look around for another set of motors, because if it takes energy to push the fan, then that means that they're drawing more current than they should, and that's taxing the switch and the wiring and the fuse box and stuff like that. And eventually,
I notice when they cycle on that the RPM, idle RPM, kind of drops some.
well,
You know, it tells me that they're kind of loaded.
nothing takes more energy in the car except the starter motor. Those original twin cooling fans are just dynamite, but they really, really, really take a lot of power. When you're just holding one and you kick it on, the thing, it wants to pop out of your hand. They really move. They really draw a lot of current. But if they're sticky, they're going to draw even more. So
Should I take them out and try to lube them better, or?
I just do it in place. Because
There's some kind of, I noticed today looking at them, there's a little kind of like a webbing down there in like a donut between the back end of the yellow plastic blade and the front of the motor.
Well, there's a spherical bearing in there, and some of that spherical bearing sits on the outside of the housing that traps it. So all you can do is just keep putting oil on it and hope that some of that oil is going to migrate in there and loosen it up.
This isn't any kind of a bearing though. It's just kind of a loop of like a black webbing of some kind.
I don't know.
My inclination is to just rip it out of there.
Well, if it's something that's wrapped around there, maybe that's what's adding that resistance to turn. I don't know.
Well, I can't
Yeah.
help anything, I wouldn't think. I mean,
No, I don't think so either.
okay, thank you, John.
Sure. Gil Dupre says he's used Protronics for years with no problems. That's because he bought it so many years ago. Why aren't resistor plugs used? They are. On an MGB, it's an RN9YC. So they are resistor plugs. And the whole point is to keep the static out of your radio. What sizes can be used for an MGA that can be used? We're talking about, we got Bradley here, Bradley Schwartz. What tire sizes can be used for an MGA? And that you want to get as close as you can to 165 15s. The smaller the tire, the better. You just got to hunt around for it. Universal Tire in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Coker Tire in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Both of them sell tires. Tire Rack. I just talked to somebody the other day that bought their MGA or TD tires or something or other from Midget tires, something that's a little off a normal size, and no problem. They got them. It's easy. So
those are, if it's just 165 R15, my understanding was that's really 165/80. Is that
/70 or /80? Yes.
Okay, so /70 or 80. Don't
Right.
don't get like /65 or whatever.
Well,
probably not available.
The shorter you get,
right,
in the profile, the harsher the ride.
Okay.
So you wouldn't want to get 165/20s, because then the tire well, I mean, take it to an extreme, but then instead of the tire being that tall off the rim, it's only this tall, and
you lose height on the tire.
well, you lose height, but you also lose the springiness,
right?
The cushion.
Okay, thank you.
The last time I got tires, I bought. I think they're still out there. I bought Vredestein, VRED, Vredestein, Indonesian, I suppose, or Dutch tires.
Dutch.
Yeah.
But some of those have a summer compound, and you're not supposed to use them below 40 degrees. You have to be careful about that.
Where do you live?
I'm in New York.
Wow.
I read that today because I just ordered a set, my second set for the TD. I ordered 155s. And I read the thing about summer compound. Now, I don't live in New York. I live in South Carolina, but we get down to freezing every winter, and I drive my car all year round. And I've gotten 10 good years of service out of the ones that I'm taking off and throwing away. And I'm expecting to get 10 good years out of the new ones I'm going to put on tomorrow. They were about $125 a piece.
Right.
They say it right there on the screen that it's a summer compound, and if it gets down to 40 degrees, you got to do all kind of stuff before you try to mount it or roll it or use it or smile
Right.
at it.
Yes, I saw that.
Any of that crap.
That's brand new. I'm not a tire guy. I don't know a lot about tires, but this is the first time I've heard it. I just learned how to read the date codes like a week ago.
Well, that was on the Tire Rack site. So I don't know if that was Tire Rack covering their butt or Redstein telling Tire Rack what to put on there. But I used to be a lawyer, so I know where all that crap comes from. It just $500 an hour.
Yeah.
That's the brand I use, John. I use Quatrack. Really nice tread design, and it tested in its class. It tested the best on dry track.
Okay.
Who cares if it's good in the snow, because I don't drive in the snow.
Right. So Pat from California just logged in to say that Vredestein used a TD in their booth at the SEMA show, probably in Las Vegas. So that's cool. That's cool. And I've been reminded, although I think I thought I pronounced it correctly as Ojai, O-J-A-I, it's more of that California Spanish pronunciation. That's where the earthquake was in Ojai. That's also where Kelvin Dodd lives. Kelvin is the Moss Tech guy that you talk to when everybody else gives up and they move you over to Kelvin. So anyway, we are through all the chat section. We went through it pretty fast tonight. We're at 9:24, almost 9:30. So it's been a fun show. I hope I've been providing some information about ignition systems. I'll tell you that the new distributors that you buy, whether they're point style or whether they're electronic, who knows what the advance rate is, and the advance rate is an important factor in driving. So the 32 degrees is critical at high speed, but where is it all along the way? Don't buy a new distributor. Get your old distributor rebuilt and talk to the distributor guys and get a distributor that's best for you. Anyway, with that, I'm wondering, I'm up for my, if Doug Clark is still on, I don't know, is Doug on tonight? So every now and then he is not, because there's something I go up against, some other thing he's got, but Doug, are you on tonight? Oh my gosh. Doug,
John, can you hear me?
there's Gary Greenspoon's on, but Doug's not on. So I brought my hat, so I'll save this to the next time. I'll wear it tonight, but Doug hasn't got a cool hat like this.
Yay.
We always have our hat challenge, So I had a guy from someplace in Wisconsin. Oh, I had his name earlier today. Come on. He's a lawyer, and every year he came to the summer party every year, and every year he brought me a different hat. So he brought me this Bobby hat. So is this cool or what? So, yeah. I was wearing this along with that MGA police car that we built in the shop about 15 years ago. Then I could get pulled over for impersonating a policeman, maybe. So anyway, I want to thank everybody for being on tonight, for having a good time. The next place I'm going to be is at the in Altoona, Pennsylvania, at the end of this week, at the Central Pennsylvania British Car Fest, about their 28th annual or something. They've been doing that for a long time, and I've been there for, this is not continuously, but I bet this is my 20th year or 22nd year. I've been to a lot of them. And then after that, the weekend after that in Chicago. But then after that, it's quiet. I'm not going anywhere. I had to cancel my East Coast tour because I got a car in the shop that I've got to get done. And it's going to be gangbusters. I'm going to fly on that and try to get that done. And as soon as I'm done with that, then I'm going to decide what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And I don't know whether I'm going to rebuild distributors. Probably not. There's already two good guys doing it. Or fuel pumps, maybe, because Tom Ball hasn't been answering the phone for a while. Or gearboxes or carburetors, or maybe I'll do an occasional tune-up, or maybe I'll just be on the road more and do seminars. I have no idea. Anyway.
John, can you take one more call?
Sure. What's up, Gary?
Thank you. I wrote you earlier, but I had to leave. I wrote a few weeks ago, there was discussion on condensers, though 22.22 is what's recommended. There was talk about 0.18.
I don't know anything about it. I don't know anything about changing the microfarads and getting better performance. I don't know.
It wasn't the performance. The 0.08 sort of made your points last forever.
Maybe.
Okay, that's fine. Your hat looked great.
Thank you. Very kind. Two calls from Vancouver tonight, so, all right.
Victoria.
Oh, well, all
Victoria.
right, okay, all right, okay.
They
Hey,
call you
John, John, how do I get the information about cleaning that windshield frame?
Send me an email, johnTwist@universitymotorsltd.com. And I'll copy that off and I'll just copy it off and send it to you. It was a guy who wrote me and he used, he went all the way down to like 4/aught or 5/aught steel wool and prepped it. And then he had the all 4 pieces powder coated. I mean, he had to have the screen apart, but it gives you, it gives you an attitude and a place to start. So.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Sure.
You will.
All right, well, everybody, thank you very, very kindly for being on tonight. Go on my website and push the PayPal button, send something along. It'd be very kind. And we're talking about having another summer party next year already. So we'll keep everybody apprised on what's going on there. What's that?
When's the next Zoom?
2 weeks from now, I think. And that will be, just a minute. That would make it the 4th, but that is Labor Day. So that doesn't make any sense at all. So it must be the week after Labor Day. It must be the 11th. So September 11th, that's a odd day. So apparently it's going to be on the 11th. But I don't have my calendar out in front of me, but it's not the 4th because that's Labor Day. So must be the 11th.
Okay, you'll be on.
But I will send it. I will send a note out to everybody, of course.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good night, John.
All right, John.
Bye.
Thanks for being on tonight, and thanks to everybody for being on tonight. Gosh.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Sure help.
Good night.
Yeah,
See you in,
your comments from California, Sean. Nice to see you on tonight. And thanks everybody for being here. Bob, Gloria, it's a pleasure always. And Tom,
you and Altoona.
thanks. Yeah, Crystal, I hear your voice back there. Thank you, Darcy Ballinger. He got home apparently because he's on the Zoom tonight. So that's real nice. And here's Jim Pastor, who's got in 2 days is going into what number is this, Jim? 28?
29th.
29th.
Yeah,
Oh my
Lori,
gosh.
Lori says next year the motto is 30 and out.
Yeah, that's what she said at 20 and 25, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it. Everybody's excited.
Always. It's a great thing. It's a great thing that you do. So thanks so much.
Thanks.
Right. All right, everybody. Thank you.
Nice turnout tonight, John. I saw 189.
Oh, all right. Oh my gosh. 189. Oh God, I gotta write that down. I
don't know. I had 180 on my count.
I'll take 189. Okay. Thanks, Marty.
I saw it at 189, so I don't know. I'm just when I looked.
Hey, all right.
It may have gone higher.
It happened at 750 though. That was our peak.
Okay. I don't know what we'll talk about next time. It'll be something. Carburetors always draws in more people, but most carburetor problems are distributor problems. So anyway, maybe by that time I'll have a better camera in my green screen. So all right, everybody, thank you very kindly.
Good night.
Thanks, John.
See ya. Yeah, thanks for being
travel.
on.
Have a good holiday.
Yeah, you too. Thank you. See ya.
Bye-bye. Take care.